On June 23, 2003, when a stabbing happened in the quiet English town of Altrincham, the cops seemed to be on top of it. But as the truth about this strange case came out, it was shocking to see that things were not at all what they seemed. This case is a great example of how even the cases that seem the easiest can have the most shocking twists. In the world of crime, this shows that the truth is often weirder than fiction. But what really happened in this case, and what crazy truth was hiding behind all the lies? Altrincham is a busy town in the English county of Greater Manchester. It has a long past that goes back to the 13th century. The town has both modern conveniences and interesting old places. Altrincham is known for its outdoor markets, where you can buy a wide range of handmade goods and street food. There are many shops, cafes, and restaurants in the town center, which makes it a popular place for both tourists and locals. Altrincham also has a number of parks where people can have picnics and do other fun things. But Altrincham is also where one of the weirdest crimes in history happened. On Sunday, June 29, 2003, just before 8 p.m., a stabbing happened in a lane behind a row of shops in the Goose Green neighborhood of Altrincham. When they got there, they saw a 14-year-old boy fighting for his life and bleeding to death from many stab wounds. A 16-year-old boy was nearby. He was the one who told the cops about the crime. He told the person who was lying there in a pool of blood that he was his friend. For the sake of this story, we will call the 14-year-old victim John and his 16-year-old friend Mark. Because they were so young, no one knew who they really were. John had 2 stab wounds, one in the chest, which was not very deep, and one in the belly, which was 6 inches deep. A few feet away from John, there was a big bloody kitchen knife on the ground. Even though John was very close to dying, rescuers worked hard to keep him alive. He was taken to Wythenshawe Hospital within minutes, while the police started looking for solutions. The cops started their investigation by talking to Mark, who was the only person who saw what happened. Still crying and shaking from what he had just seen, the 16-year-old told the police that he and John were walking down an alleyway in Goose Green while drinking soft drinks from a McDonald's nearby when an unknown man struck them. Mark said that the man attacked John without any reason and tried to grab him. He then cut John twice and ran away. Mark stood there and watched, shaking with fear. He said the man looked like he was in his early 20s and was wearing a baseball cap, a black hoodie, and black pants. John's injuries were so bad that he had to go to the hospital. The 6-inch cut in his stomach went through his kidney and liver. Blood built up inside his body, making it hard for his diaphragm to move and stopping his lungs from working. On the operation table, doctors had to take out his gallbladder. The boy's heart stopped twice during the attack, but somehow he was able to live. He stayed in a hospital bed for days, hooked up to a breathing machine, and closely watched. After the event, everyone in the area was in shock. The stabbing happened in Goose Green, which was off Stamford New Road and near a shopping mall in Altrincham, a wealthy neighborhood of Manchester. The only crime that happened there was the odd shoplifting. So the whole town started to worry that a dangerous person was loose and looking for young children in the area. The stabbings also got a lot of attention from the local media. Police told the people what the attacker looked like and asked them to share any important information they might have. Several newspapers said that a guy who matched the description of the attacker had been seen, but none of these supposed reports turned out to be true. Investigators were worried that the attacker might strike again because they had no idea why he or she did it. Even though there were a lot of worries, the investigation went on like any other. Investigators knew that the unclear description of the man was not enough to help them find the man. The police took hours of CCTV video from the area, hoping that one of the cameras would have caught a glimpse of the hooded knifeman. They are still asking for witnesses to come forward. The 2 boys were lucky that a closed-circuit camera at the bottom of the alley had caught everyone who walked by, including them. The footage reveals that the 2 boys entered the alley 25 minutes prior to the alleged stabbing. Even though they did not catch the actual killing, Mark and John were seen most of the time. They were shocked to find out that no hooded man had ever gone down the alley. At this point, the case, which had seemed simple, turned into one of the strangest in history. Within 10 days of the event, the whole case had changed. Mark, a 16-year-old boy who was at first thought to be the only person who saw this horrible killing, was now the main suspect. Investigators knew that John was not stabbed by a guy in a hood with a knife, but by his own friend Mark. But there were not as many solutions as questions. Why did he try to hurt his friend? When the police showed Mark the CCTV video, he changed his story and said he was the one who stabbed his friend. But nobody could have guessed what he was going to say next. He said that a British spy who worked for the Secret Service had asked him to join. Over an online chat room, the supposed spy convinced Mark to kill his friend. He had clear directions on how to commit the crime. He was also told he would join the British Secret Service, meet the Prime Minister, and get a gun and up to £500,000 in cash. The investigators did not believe what Mark said. They thought he was making up the story to get people to stop thinking bad things about him. They took his computer and found something else that was shocking. When the police took Mark's computer, they found a chat room with 58,000 lines of text. Even though it sounded crazy, investigators found out that Mark was telling the truth this time. But the police were still trying to figure out how this strange puzzle fit together. They chose to learn more about Mark's life. Mark's life was mostly just like everyone else's. He was from a respectable working-class family in Stockport, Manchester, and he was very close to his parents. He did pretty well in school, but he was really good at sports. He was also known for being friendly and well-liked. His school papers showed that he had never been in trouble. Mark spent a lot of time on his computer and often went to chat rooms on the internet. 6 months before the stabbing, Mark found a chat room for teens in Manchester. At the time, he had no idea that his life was about to get very bad. This popular chat room had a lot of the same features as many others. People could make friends, talk, post pictures, talk about their hobbies and gossip, and if they wanted to, they could even see other people via webcam. Mark was using the chat room to meet girls in the Manchester area and make new friends. Mark did not take long to become hooked on these chats, and soon he was spending hours at his computer. Mark's target, John, was one of many people he met in the chat room. Mark was interested in a girl named Rachel. She said she was 16 years old and worked at a gym in the area. After talking for 2 days, Rachel brought her stepbrother John, who is 14, to meet Mark. Over the next 3 months, the three kept in touch through the chat room. They talked about things they all liked, like football, movies, and relationships. Mark and John were becoming best friends at the same time that Mark was falling in love with Rachel, and it seems that she felt the same way. Rachel said she did not have a screen, but they seemed to be dating quickly based on what they said in the chat room. Even though the two kept making plans to meet in person, they never did because Rachel always had a reason. But Mark did not seem to care, and he even told Rachel in the chat room that he loved her. 3 months before the stabbing, a new person joined Mark's internet life and the chat room. The guy who went by the name Kevin told everyone in the chat room that he was gay. Before he said something shocking, no one in the chat room took him seriously. He sent Mark an email saying that he had taken Rachel, who was Mark's online lover. Kevin also said that she would be freed if Mark was willing to show his feet while he masturbated on a webcam. Mark did not seem to be worried about it, and instead of going to the police, he quickly gave in to Kevin's requests. Kevin then said that he was letting Rachel go, and for a short time, she came back to the chat room. However, after a few days, Rachel quit talking to anyone. Kevin told Mark that Rachel had been taken again, and this time she had been killed. Still, Mark remained silent and refrained from contacting the police, despite expressing profound sadness over Rachel's death. Mark kept talking to people in the chat room. In fact, Mark and John got closer after Rachel's claimed death. Mark never got to meet Rachel, but he was hanging out with John outside of the chat room. Even though the two boys were different ages, they were quickly becoming great friends. A few weeks after Rachel died, Mark became interested in another teen girl named Lindsay East. At first, their talk was easygoing, but soon they were telling each other personal things. Lindsay told Mark that she was a junior Secret Service worker for MI6, which is the British intelligence service. This made the situation even stranger. She also said that she had only joined this MSN chat room to find Kevin, who she thought had killed Rachel and was now after her stepbrother John. John, who did not know about the situation, was supposedly under government security. Lindsay also said that she hoped Mark would be able to help her with her goal. Mark did not hear from Lindsay for a few days after this discussion. Then, Lindsay sent Mark an email with a future date, just in case she died in action. In the email, Lindsay asked Mark to continue protecting John, which she had not yet done. Mark's online dating life came to another sad end, but the strange turns did not stop there. At the end of April 2003, Rachel showed up in the chat room again. This was a crazy turn of events. Mark was glad to hear that she was still alive, but he was also shocked. But he quickly saw that Rachel's story was not true. Rachel said that while she was in a coma, she was held captive. Mark did not say how much he believed the story, but Rachel soon left the chat room for the last time. Regardless of the outrageous stories, Mark continued to frequent the chat room and engage in his usual activities. Then he started talking to someone named Janet Dobinson, but unlike the other times, the woman this time was not a teenager. She said she was a pretty 44-year-old married woman who lived with her husband and 2 kids. She was a real estate agent to the rest of the world. Despite the improbable nature of the claim, she informed Mark that she was indeed a spy for the British Secret Service, surpassing Lindsay in rank. She said she was the 3rd most important woman in England, which is true. Janet made it clear from the start, by always writing in capital letters, that she was not there to talk to teenagers, but to get one of them to join the Secret Service. From what she said, Mark was a perfect fit for that job. But she said that Mark had to show that he was trustworthy and loyal before he could go to London for his MI6 training. Mark was not sure about the job, but he could not turn down such a good offer, so he went along with Janet's plan. Janet told Mark that as part of his training to join the MI6, he had to work in secret as a bodyguard for James Bell, a teenage MI6 agent from Manchester. Janet told him that James should not find out that Mark was watching him. Mark was happy to work for MI6 because he liked James Bond, but he was still interested in what made James so important. Janet told him a long story about a secret safe at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean that only a few countries knew about. But the only person who knew how to open it was the Queen of England. Since the Queen could not open the safe herself, she gave the codes to only one other person, and that person was James Bell. Mark was about to be surprised again. Soon, he found out that James Bell was his best friend John. Mark did not say anything to John even after this shocking news. Instead, he started to spend more time with him in order to do his job. Even more often, they had sleepovers. Mark told Janet about everything he did back in the chat room, and she was happy with his progress. Mark's next job was to get John out of school without causing suspicion, and he was able to do that in a few days as well. Janet was ready to give Mark another task. The last thing he did before joining the MI6 was very strange. He was told to make John look gay by having 2 people meet, but Janet would not tell him more about this plan. Instead, she told him that if he failed, it could hurt national security and cause her to lose her job. Mark soon told Janet that he and John had both watched Graffiti. He was very happy when Janet told him that he was now an official spy. But his first task was not at all what he thought it would be. Janet told Mark to kill his best friend John, whom she had been telling him to protect all this time. Mark did not think it was true. At first, he thought Janet might be playing a trick on him, but she insisted that the country needed him. She said that John was planning a school killing or something similar, so the British government needed to get rid of him. Mark said that he did not want to kill his best friend, so Janet told him that in John's case, it would not be murder. Janet told Mark that John was sick to the end of his life, and that killing him would be a kind thing to do. Janet told Mark that if he did his job well, he would get £80 million in cash, meet the then Prime Minister Tony Blair and the Queen, and get sexual favors from Jen and herself. Janet went on to give Mark detailed directions about what kind of knife he should use, what kind of boots he should wear, and where he should do his job. Mark agreed to do the job, but he still was not sure about it. But a few days later, John told Mark that he had a brain tumor, which made Mark even more sure that Janet was telling the truth. In fact, Mark did carry out this crazy plan on the evening of June 29, 2003. Mark and John stayed together all day. During their shopping trip, he even bought a knife that was 6 inches long. Mark lied to John about the knife when John asked him about it. He said it was a gift for his mother. Mark and John went into Goose Green Alley on Sally Way as it was getting dark, away from any security cameras. Mark followed Janet's directions and stabbed his friend twice, once in the chest and once in the stomach. Before calling for help, he waited 20 minutes. Despite her assurance, Janet failed to show up as she had promised. When the cops showed up, Mark quickly made up a story about the man in the hood with the knife. When John woke up again, the police questioned him. At first, he agreed with Mark that a stranger attacked them in the alley and told the cops that he did not know who the person with the knife was. When Mark said that he had stabbed John, John confirmed that it was his best friend Mark who had done it, but he could not say why. Mark was caught in July 2003 and charged with trying to kill someone. He was sent to a juvenile detention center. He did not know why Janet had not come to help him. Police, on the other hand, thought that there might be a pedophile or even a group of pedophiles behind Janet Dobinson's online image, so they sent out investigators to try to find out who Janet Dobinson really was. Even though the search for Janet Dobinson's real name started right away, it took the cops 3 months to even start to figure out what was going on. Mark's computer had a huge amount of information. Sally Hogg, a criminal intelligence expert, was asked to look at the 58,000 lines of text that were found on Mark's computer. Sally found out that Mark talked to many other profiles in the chat room beside Rachel, Kevin, Lindsay, and Janet. These were people he had never met in real life. As she looked into it more, she found a web of lies and corruption that no one could have imagined. Investigators first thought that all the characters were different people, but in a shocking turn of events, they found that nothing was what it seemed to be. The twist in this case was so strange and surprising that no one could say anything. Sally Hogg was shocked to find out that all of the profiles were about the same person. Mark was in the middle of a carefully made virtual world, and John was in charge of the whole thing. John did not grow up in a home full of love and fun as Mark did. Even though he lived with his mother, he did not remember his real father, who tried to take him away when he was a child. He thought one of his stepfathers was his real father until he found out the truth by accident. John was only 7 years old when his drug-addicted dad left the family. As a child, he would often see his mother crying at home. When he went to school, kids would pick on him. Even when he was young, these things hurt his mental health. Even though he did well in school, he kept to himself and did not talk to anyone. When John was 11, his mother finally found someone to settle down with after a string of failed relationships. John did not get along well with his new dad, which was a shame. This, along with the fact that he was gay, made him feel very sad. So, when his mother gave him a computer for his 13th birthday to help him with schoolwork, John turned to the internet to avoid his real-life problems and fell into a fantasy world. Maybe John was only interested in dreams when he pretended to be so many different people in the chat room. He found comfort in the fact that he could be anyone he wanted to be in his virtual world. By February 2003, John was talking to 20 to 30 people a night in NSN chat rooms, and he met Mark within a week. Once John told the other boy that he was Rachel's brother, they got along great because they liked the same things. After Rachel died, John became obsessed with Mark because he was afraid that Mark would soon leave him. John made up fake identities and a complex web of lies to keep Mark interested in him. When Mark spent time with them as part of his job for the British Secret Service, the trick worked. But John's happiness did not last long. He soon learned that the virtual world he had worked so hard to build was quickly getting out of hand. No one ever found out if the 14-year-old boy thought it would be impossible to get out from under all the lies he told, or if he just did not want to live anymore. But behind the scenes, John was in charge of his own murder while Mark played the part of a dummy, which led to a terrible mess. At the end of May 2004, the two boys were in court. During the trial, neither boy even looked at the other. When the riddle was solved, Mark said he could not believe he had been so stupid, but John did not say a word. Mark admitted to trying to kill someone and got a 2-year control order. John finally admitted that he was the only person in British history to be charged with causing his own death. John was also charged with perverting the course of justice. He was given a 3-year supervision order and told he could not use chat rooms or the internet without being watched. The two boys could never talk to each other again. Judge David Madison said that even good writers would have trouble making up a story like this one. The judge also said that if the crimes had happened under normal conditions, the criminals would have gotten very long jail sentences. But that was not the case, and he did not think time in jail would help either boy. Mark would be 32 years old, and John would be 30. Their real identities will always be safe. The twist in this case was so strange and surprising that no one could say anything. It is one of those rare situations that makes you question everything you thought you knew about people.
She's in prison, locked up for the rest of her life. I have a great life right now, and I'm with people who love me, and a real mother who actually cares about me. I don't even love her, and just because she gave birth to me, it doesn't mean she's my mom. She is Annie.
On Mother's Day in 2006, a mother was snatched from this world in an act of senseless violence. A day that was supposed to be filled with love and thanks for all mothers in the world. In an instant, the warmth and sensitivity that she provided to her family was extinguished, leaving in her wake a trail of anguish and pain. Her loved ones are now battling to make sense of a world that can be so cruel as a result of the incident that occurred. Hi and welcome back to our channel. If you are new here, please consider subscribing, as it helps us motivate to create more intriguing content for you. Let's have a look at the disturbing case of Patricia Mary. Patricia was a mother of 2 grown children named Anne and John. In addition, Patricia was a Spanish teacher at Westdale High School, which is located in Stamford, Connecticut. Stamford was around a half-hour drive from her house, which was located in the bucolic community of Ossining, New York. In 2002, her son John, who was 21 years old at the time, sadly died in a motorbike accident. This occurred a few years before Patricia was taken from this world. Both Patricia and Anne were in utter disbelief. Everyone cherished John because of how well he had taken care of his mother. Patricia, recognizing the importance of spending more time with her child, made the life-altering decision to retire. By retiring, she aimed to prioritize her family and devote a greater portion of her life to her loved ones. However, her daughter Anne, who was dealing with her own feelings of loss, took a different path in coping with her emotions. Seeking an escape from her personal struggles, Anne began to seek solace in alternative outlets. She started venturing out more frequently and found herself associating with a crowd known for their rowdy behavior. It was during this time that Anne's path crossed with that of a local boxer named Ron Kerner, and the two soon embarked on a romantic relationship. Their initial encounter took place in a bar or club, where they were drawn to each other. However, Ron whispers of having some connection to the mafia, which added an element of intrigue to their relationship. Many people speculated that Anne was attracted to his reputation as a bad guy. Despite Patricia's disapproval, Anne remained undeterred by the concerns of others. She seemed to be drawn to Ron's perceived danger and rebellious nature. Several months into their relationship, Anne discovered that she was pregnant. However, instead of embracing the idea of starting a family with Ron, she made the difficult decision to have an abortion. After revealing her choice to Ron, Anne cut off all communication with him and ceased seeing him altogether. She informed her family that the baby's father had expressed no interest in being involved with the child, which spared her from facing too many inquiries about the situation. Despite the complexities and troubled choices surrounding Anne's romantic life, Patricia found joy in the birth of her granddaughter. She embraced the role of becoming a grandmother and cherished the arrival of Ariana, her daughter-in-law, Anne's baby girl. For Patricia, the birth of Ariana brought a sense of happiness and fulfillment, allowing her to experience the joys of being a grandmother amidst the challenges and turmoil within their family dynamics. The other side. Anne was still in a state of mourning following the death of her brother. Anne discovered a unique way to connect with John, whilst Patricia found solace in the community of the church. Anne went to see a psychic by the name of Lisa, but it is unclear whether this is the person's genuine identity. Lisa informed Anne that John was present in the room with them. She also mentioned that she had a premonition that something terrible was going to happen to someone who was very close to her. Annie increased the amount of time she spent with Lisa, and she developed a close relationship with Lisa's daughter, Carmela Magnetti. They started hanging out with Ariana as well, and soon became completely preoccupied with the young girl. Even though Patricia did not agree with it, she did it because she wanted to show Anne her support. She also did not want to miss out on the opportunity to spend time with her granddaughter, so she maintained harmony between the two sets of parents and children. On Halloween night in 2005, Anne received communications from a person who identified himself as John. The letters warned her to keep away from their mother and stated that she and their uncle Mike were attempting to kidnap Ariana. The messages also stated that she needed to stay away from Mike. After leaving, Anne moved in with Lisa and Carmela, who were already roommates. They did everything they could to prevent Patricia from seeing Ariana, but Patricia put up a fight and went to the family court to fight for her right to visitation with her granddaughter. The murder. On May 11, 2006, Patricia had a scheduled commitment to attend a meeting at the church. However, she failed to appear, causing concern among her family members. As Mother's Day approached on May 14, Patricia's family had still not heard from her, which further heightened their worries. Consequently, Patricia's brother decided to visit her house to investigate the matter. When he arrived at Patricia's residence, he knocked on the front door, but there was no response. Being aware that one of the windows in the house was usually left unsecured, he decided to enter through that window. As he entered the house, he made his way to the living room, where he eventually discovered Patricia's lifeless body. Tragically, Patricia had been brutally attacked, suffering from 24 stab wounds inflicted by a butcher knife. It was also evident that a baseball bat had been used to beat her, indicating the extreme violence of the assault. The scene was undoubtedly horrifying for Patricia's brother to witness. Upon receiving a report about a suspicious death, the police promptly arrived at the crime scene. Their investigation confirmed that Patricia had been deceased for approximately 3 days prior to the discovery. As the authorities examined the area where the crime took place, they encountered several pieces of evidence that raised compelling questions. Among the materials found at the scene was a note, recovered alongside a hair. The note indicated that Patricia and a person named Mike had hired someone to abduct Ariana, implying that Patricia had been involved in a kidnapping plot. However, it appeared that the kidnapper had deviated from the agreed plan and ultimately murdered Patricia as a result. The discovery of this note, coupled with the hair found in its proximity, introduced a perplexing element to the investigation. It suggested a more complex motive behind Patricia's tragic demise, indicating a connection between the kidnapping plot and her murder. The police now faced the challenging task of piecing together the events leading up to Patricia's death, unraveling the involvement of Mike, identifying the potential kidnapper, and understanding the sequence of events that culminated in the brutal attack on Patricia, the suspect. Anne was the first person the authorities needed to speak to about the situation. Anne was left inconsolable after being told that her mother had been brutally killed. She explained that she and her mother had been attempting to resolve their differences and that she intended to give her mother permission to visit Ariana. She stated that she, Carmela, and Ariana had been at the shopping mall in White Plains at the time that the murder took place. She offered the police a receipt from the shopping center, as well as the name of someone they should investigate, who was Ron Kerner. Anne and her ex-boyfriend Ron claimed that Ron would have wanted to kill Patricia if he discovered she had kept the kid if he had known she had kept it. When Ron was questioned by the authorities, he claimed that he was unaware of the fact that he was a parent. In addition, he was able to provide an alibi, stating that he had been at a boxing fight. He could no longer be considered a suspect. A sinister plan to kill. In this scenario, the local authorities conducted an investigation using surveillance footage from a shopping center. During the examination, they identified Carmela and Ariana, but could not locate Anne in the footage. As the investigation progressed, Carmela succumbed to the pressure of the police's interrogation and confessed to certain actions. Carmela admitted to the authorities that she had taken Ariana to the mall as a means to create a false alibi for herself. On May 11, Carmela claimed that she dropped off Anne at Patricia's house, as she stated during the investigation. This specific date serves as a crucial piece of information in understanding the timeline and events surrounding the case. It is implied that Carmela's intention was to provide herself with an alibi by having witnesses who could vouch for her whereabouts. To further corroborate Carmela's statement, the authorities reviewed the phone records of both Anne and Carmela, which aligned with the events she described. According to the investigation, Annie went to Patricia's house intending to speak with her, but instead, she ended up murdering her. The evidence gathered at the crime scene supported this conclusion. A hair found at the site matched Anne's hair, her DNA was discovered on the knife used in the crime, and a handwriting examination confirmed that Anne had written the note found at the scene. On August 4, 2006, based on the compelling findings and evidence gathered during the investigation, Anne was apprehended and taken into custody under suspicion of murdering her mother. The culmination of the inquiry led the authorities to believe that Anne was responsible for the tragic death of Patricia. However, despite the incriminating evidence, Anne maintained her innocence, insisting that she was not guilty of the crime. As for Carmela, she was arrested and taken into custody on charges of interfering with the prosecution's investigation and tampering with evidence. It is implied that her involvement in providing a false alibi for herself and potentially obstructing the investigation led to these charges. Convictions. The trial of Anne started in September 2007. The jury's decision to find her guilty of murder in the second degree did not take very long to reach. She received a sentence that ranged from 25 years to life in jail for her crime. Carmela received a sentence of 4 years in prison for her role in obstructing the investigation of the crime and tampering with evidence. 2011 marked the year of her freedom. Carmela and her mother had a computer at home, and it was determined that the instant messages sent from John originated from that computer. The court decided that Ron should have custody of Ariana, and he referred to her as his princess. Mike was correct the whole time. Both Carmela and her mother are awful individuals, and they took advantage of a young woman who was grieving the death of her brother. She was so certain that Patricia and Mike were attempting to take her daughter away from her. Anne deliberately ended her mother's life, robbing her of the opportunity to spend more time with her own daughter. Instead, she will spend the rest of her life behind bars. What do you think of our video? Let me know in the comment section below.